The biggest privilege is the privilege of a second chance.
Oh, absolutely.
That is the
Absolutely.
biggest privilege. And I think that's something that people who have never dealt with a certain kind of financial instability, that's what they really don't understand.
Totally.
Is that it's not about whether or not people make mistakes, because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody's gonna make mistakes. Everybody
Right.
has made mistakes. The people who are telling you don't do this, the people who were telling you when you were 5 and 6 and 10 and drilling that into your head before you were out on your own, are usually telling you that because they made their own mistakes. The difference between those people and someone who has to sleep outside in a lot of cases is the privilege of a second chance.
Absolutely. The
That's
the
it.
ability to have your mistakes be lessons and not
Yes.
punishments,
Yes.
and being able to learn from a mistake is such a privilege. And I definitely had that privilege. I was
Yes,
living
me
with my
too.
parents when I spent that money. So even though I felt the pain of it in superficial ways, I wasn't on the street because of it.
Right.
And so I'm very cognizant that a lot of people don't have that privilege. But it's interesting because we were talking earlier before filming about how the way we sometimes talk about our upbringings will upset our parents.
Oh yeah.
My mother, even like a couple weeks ago, she was at my house and she was crying and she was like, I hear you talking sometimes about how, you wanted for this or you felt insecure or upset about that. And it breaks my heart because I always felt like we had enough. And it's heartbreaking because we did have enough. Like
Right.
I was never hungry. I was never worried about would we have a place to live tomorrow. And we owned a house, in a very not ritzy neighborhood of Charlotte, North Carolina, but we owned a house. And for them, that felt like that was such an achievement and that
Right.
was such a thing to be proud of. And they did raise, 2 daughters and they did make it and they have ascended in class strata now.
Right.
But I always tell her, I'm like, you're right, but so am I. Like, we can both have an experience and a relationship to this. And to be honest about what that felt like is in no way an attempt to denigrate what you did, because I'm so proud of what you did. But it also is something that I don't think it's fair that you guys had to live the way that you had to live.
Yes.
Like, I want better for you, and I want better for like that 30-year ago version of you.
Yes. This is what it's so hard sometimes to get across to my mother. Now, my dad is a completely other story. My dad is pretty much like, yeah, you're right. Like, my dad is very much like, you own your feelings, and yep. Because my dad messed up in a major way. A life-defining way.
How so?
My dad went to prison when I was around 6 months old.
Oh, wow.
And he did not get out until about a month before I turned 30.
I remember reading a lot about your experience with having an incarcerated parent, and I do want to talk about the financial realities of that. But
Right.
I am curious what you have a hard time explaining to your mother.
I have a really hard time explaining to her that I feel like what she did was miraculous.
Yes.
My mom raised 4 kids by herself. No consistent help, never a dual income in our home, ever. She raised 4 kids by herself. She worked constantly. Like, it's really as much as she could. My mom took all available overtime, like everything.
What did she do for work?
My mom worked at the sheriff's department in our county. She was essentially like a guard at the jail. My mom's terrifying. She is. Like, she's the best. And she's really, like, you'd meet her and you'd be like, oh, she's really sweet and charming. Also, I would never mess with her in my life. I don't know what it is about my mom. She just got, like, this terrifying thing. And she was
That's aspirational, though.
she was a perfect county jail guard. Because everybody loved her and or was scared of her. But she was like, I think what she did was miraculous. It does not change the fact that she never had enough.
Right.
And not even that she never had enough in terms of money, but also she never had enough in terms of options.
Right.
Like, it's not just about what you were able to do. It's about what was available to you. Like,
Yeah.
that's the tragedy. Like, that's the part that's a tragedy. Because there's nothing more she really could have done in terms of work and providing. Not without, I mean, really, like, there was nothing more she could have done. I can't imagine what my mother's options would have been. Go back to school? How?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you know,
That costs money.
that costs money. That costs money. It takes away money and it takes away time. All
Which
at the
is
same.
money.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it's like her options were so few, and so much of that didn't have anything to do with what she chose. It had so much to do with the circumstances of her life. And I think she wanted to erase that for me, or she wanted it to not be a factor for me by denying it in herself, which of course doesn't work. And
Right.
so now that I'm talking about these things and I'm having this conversation publicly, a big part of my tension with my mom around that is her still holding on to this image and wanting to have this image more than she wants to heal what happened in reality.
Right.
And it's hard for me because I'm like, I just want you to be here in reality with me. I want
Yeah.
you to come over here to reality with me, not because you're saying like these things didn't happen, but because you are really attached to the idea that it doesn't count that we lived in poverty if it never looked to other people outside our home
Right.
like we were living in
Absolutely.
poverty.